The dust-laden wind whipped through Oakridge as Olivia Hayes stumbled off the stage coach, her threadbare dress billowing around her ankles, revealing worn boots that had traveled too many miles. The year was 1875, and the promise of a new start in this mining town had quickly turned to ash in her mouth as she spotted the man waiting for her, not the kindly uncle who had promised her work, but a stranger with eyes that calculated her worth like she was livestock. This the girl. The portly man with a greasy beard examined Olivia as if inspecting damaged goods. Skinnier than you described in your letter. Olivia clutched her small carpetbag tighter. "Excuse me, sir, but I'm looking for my uncle, Thomas Hayes." The man snorted. "Thomas Hayes died of fever 3 months ago, girl, left owing me a considerable sum." He circled her, his eyes lingering uncomfortably. "Said in his last letter he had a niece coming who could work off his debt. That would be you." Olivia's heart sank. Her uncle, the last family she had, was dead. And somehow, she'd become collateral for his debts. The weight of her situation pressed down on her shoulders like lead. Orphaned at 19 after her parents died in a fire that consumed their small Kansas farm, she'd scraped together every penny for this journey west. "I don't understand," she whispered, trying to maintain her composure. "I can't be responsible for debts I knew nothing about." "That's not how things work here, Miss Hayes," he replied. "Name's Gideon Blackwell. I own the Golden Palace Saloon. Your uncle borrowed money for his mining operation." "Never struck gold, just struck out." He laughed at his own joke. "You'll work as a serving girl until the debt's paid." Olivia took a step back. "Sir, I came here to be a schoolteacher. I have references, a schoolteacher." Blackwell laughed heartily. "Oakridge doesn't need another schoolteacher. What we need are pretty faces to serve drinks to miners with gold dust burning holes in their pockets." "I won't work in a saloon," Olivia said firmly, though her voice trembled. Blackwell's face darkened. "Then I'll sell your contract to someone who'll get their money's worth. Might be the brothel down in Copper Canyon. They're always looking for new girls." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "You can't sell me. I'm a free woman." "Your uncle signed papers." He produced a wrinkled document from his vest pocket. "See here. Says any family member coming to join him becomes part of the agreement should he be unable to pay. Perfectly legal in these parts." It was a lie. It had to be. But Olivia had spent the last of her money on the stagecoach fare, and she knew no one in this dusty town at the edge of nowhere. "You have till sundown to decide," Blackwell said, tucking the paper away. "Work for me willingly, or I'll sell your contract to someone who won't be as kind. Either way, I'll get what I'm owed." He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Olivia standing alone in the street, her future crumbling around her. She wandered Oakridge in a daze, the town bustling with miners, merchants, and the occasional respectable family. The modest wooden buildings lined the main street, with the Golden Palace standing as the grandest structure, its painted facade and gold-lettered sign beckoning men inside. At the opposite end stood a small church, its steeple reaching toward heaven as if in silent opposition to the saloon. As the sun began its descent, Olivia found herself on the porch of the church, hoping for sanctuary or counsel. The door opened, revealing a silver-haired preacher whose kind eyes crinkled with concern. "You look troubled, child," he said gently. Olivia couldn't hold back her tears as she explained her situation. The preacher, Reverend Miller, listened attentively, his face growing grave. "I'm afraid Blackwell has done this before," he said when she finished. "He crafts these false debts and forges documents. The law here is flexible toward men of his standing. Sheriff Donovan is in his pocket." "What can I do?" Olivia asked desperately. The Reverend sighed. "I wish I could offer more than prayers. The stagecoach doesn't come through again for a week, and you'd need money for passage regardless." He reached into his pocket and pressed a few coins into her hand. "This isn't much, but it might buy you a meal." "Thank you," Olivia whispered, clutching the meager offering. As darkness fell, Olivia found herself walking back toward the center of town, her options dwindling with the daylight. The saloon's piano music drifted through the evening air, mingling with raucous laughter. She paused, staring at its swinging doors, wondering if working there might be her only choice until she could save enough to leave. Mighty fine evening for contemplating one's future, wouldn't you say? The deep voice startled her. Turning, Olivia found herself face to face with a tall man leaning against a hitching post. His face was partially shadowed by a worn leather hat, but she could make out strong features and eyes that seemed to see right through her. "I wasn't contemplating anything," she said defensively. "No." He straightened up, and in the lamplight from the saloon she could see him more clearly. Dust covered his denim trousers and faded blue shirt, and a day's stubble darkened his jaw. A gun belt hung at his hip, the holster well worn. "Looked to me like you were deciding whether to walk through those doors or run in the opposite direction." "It's not your concern, sir," Olivia replied, though her voice lacked conviction. The man's mouth curved into a smile that transformed his weathered face. "Yates Irwin," he said, tipping his hat. "And in a town this size, pretty much everything becomes everyone's concern by sundown." Despite her situation, Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Olivia Hayes, Miss Hayes," he nodded. "New to Oakridge, just arrived today." "And already considering work at Blackwell's establishment." His tone remained casual, but she detected judgment beneath. "I'm not considering anything," she said sharply. "I'm merely exploring my options." Yates raised an eyebrow. "Options typically don't include standing frozen in the street at dusk." Before Olivia could respond, the saloon doors burst open and Blackwell emerged, flanked by two rough-looking men. "Time's up, girl," Blackwell called out. "Made your decision." Olivia stiffened, her fingers digging into her carpetbag. She opened her mouth but found no words. "She's not interested," Yates said, stepping forward and positioning himself slightly in front of her. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, Irwin." "When you're trying to force a lady into servitude, it becomes my concern." "She owes me," Blackwell insisted. "Her uncle, let me guess," Yates interrupted. "Her uncle left debts and you've got some convenient paper saying she's responsible." He shook his head. "That routine's getting old, Gideon." Blackwell's face reddened. "I've got a legal document, you've got horse manure is what you've got," Yates said calmly. "And we both know Judge Wilson would agree if it ever came before him." The mention of the judge made Blackwell hesitate. "The girl's got nothing. No money, no prospects. What do you care?" "Maybe I see something you don't," Yates said, glancing back at Olivia. "She might be poor in pocket, but she's rich in heart. It's written all over her face." Olivia's breath caught at his words. No one had ever seen past her circumstances before. Blackwell spat on the ground. "Fine, take her, but when she's starving, don't bring her to my door." He turned and stalked back into the saloon, his lackeys following. Silence fell between Olivia and Yates. She wasn't sure whether to thank him or be wary of his intentions. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. Yates adjusted his hat. "Let's just say I've seen Blackwell's scheme before. Usually ends badly for the women involved." He gestured down the street. "I'm guessing you need a place to stay." Olivia nodded, reluctant to admit her complete vulnerability. "Mrs. Patterson runs a boarding house at the edge of town. Respectable place. She might have a room." He hesitated. "And she occasionally needs help with cooking and cleaning. Could be a way to earn your keep until you figure things out." Olivia studied him, searching for ulterior motives in his eyes but finding only straightforward concern. "Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Call me Yates. Mr. Irwin was my father, and he was a much more respectable man than I'll ever be." He smiled, revealing a small dimple in his right cheek. "Are you a cowboy?" she asked, noting his worn clothes and the slight bow to his legs that came from too many hours in the saddle. He chuckled. "I've been called worse. I run a small ranch outside town. Nothing fancy, just enough cattle to keep me busy and fed." He gestured toward the far end of the street. "Shall we see about that room?" As they walked together through the darkening town, Olivia felt a strange mixture of relief and trepidation. She'd escaped Blackwell's clutches only to place her trust in another stranger. Yet something about Yates Irwin's direct gaze and straightforward manner made her believe he might actually be the rare good man in a world that had shown her precious few. Mrs. Patterson's boarding house was a two-story wooden structure with a wide porch and neat curtains in the windows. Light glowed warmly from inside, and as they approached, Olivia caught the scent of fresh bread. The landlady, a plump woman in her 50s with streaks of gray in her dark hair, answered Yates's knock with a wooden spoon still in hand. "Yates Irwin, what brings you to my doorstep after sundown?" Her eyes quickly found Olivia, and with a young lady no less. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Miss Olivia Hayes," Yates said. "She's new in town and needs lodging. I thought of you immediately." Mrs. Patterson studied Olivia with shrewd but kind eyes. "Just arrived, did you? Family in town?" "No, madam," Olivia answered. "I came to join my uncle, but I've learned he passed away." "Thomas Hayes?" Mrs. Patterson asked, recognition dawning. When Olivia nodded, the woman clicked her tongue sympathetically. "Good man, your uncle. Fever took him fast. We all attended the service." She glanced at Yates. "I heard Blackwell was claiming Hayes owed him money." "Blackwell claims everyone owes him money," Yates said dryly. Mrs. Patterson nodded. "Well, come in, come in. Can't have a conversation on the porch with everyone's ears flapping in the breeze." The interior of the boarding house was modest but immaculately kept. A sitting room with well-worn furniture occupied the front, while delicious smells wafted from the kitchen at the back. "I do have a small room available," Mrs. Patterson said once they were seated. "It's not much, just a bed, dresser, and washstand, but it's clean." "I can't afford much," Olivia admitted, "but I'm willing to work. I can cook, clean, so—" Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "As it happens, my arthritis has been acting up something fierce lately. Having help with the heavier cleaning and cooking for the boarders would be a blessing." She named a modest sum for room and board with a reduction in exchange for Olivia's help. Relief flooded Olivia's face. "That would be perfect, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you." "Well, that's settled then," Yates said, rising from his chair. "I'll leave you ladies to get acquainted." "Thank you," Olivia said, standing as well. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "No need to dwell on what didn't happen," he interrupted gently. He tipped his hat to both women. "Mrs. Patterson, always a pleasure. Miss Hayes, welcome to Oakridge. I hope it treats you better from here on out." After he left, Mrs. Patterson showed Olivia to a small but neat room at the top of the stairs. "Bathrooms at the end of the hall. We have running water, thank the Lord. Breakfast is at 6 sharp, dinner at 6 in the evening. The other boarders are mostly shopkeepers and a couple of clerks from the assayer's office, respectable men." "It's perfect," Olivia said sincerely. "I can't thank you enough." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. "Yates vouching for you is thanks enough. He doesn't involve himself in other folks' business often, but when he does, there's usually a good reason." She studied Olivia with curious eyes. "Must have seen something special in you." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. He was just being kind. Was all Mrs. Patterson said, but her knowing smile spoke volumes. "Get some rest, dear. Tomorrow's soon enough to start your new life here." That night, lying in the narrow bed, Olivia replayed the events of the day. She'd arrived destitute and nearly been forced into servitude, only to be rescued by a quiet cowboy who'd seen value in her that others had missed. "Rich in heart," he'd called her. The words echoed in her mind as she drifted to sleep, a small flame of hope kindling in her chest for the first time in months. Morning came with golden sunlight streaming through her small window. Olivia dressed quickly in her second-best dress, which wasn't saying much, and hurried downstairs to help with breakfast. She found Mrs. Patterson already at work in the kitchen, kneading dough for biscuits. "Good morning, dear," the landlady greeted her. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Olivia admitted. "What can I help with?" For the next hour, they worked side by side, preparing a hearty breakfast for the 7 men who boarded at the house. Olivia took to the tasks easily, having run her family's household since her mother's health began failing years earlier. The boarders filed in at 6 o'clock sharp, a mixture of ages and types, though all clean and polite. They regarded Olivia with curious but respectful glances as Mrs. Patterson introduced her as our new helper. By mid-morning, Olivia had helped clear breakfast, wash the dishes, and begun learning the rhythms of the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson proved a fair employer, not overworking her but expecting tasks to be done properly. "You've got steady hands and a quick mind," the older woman commented as Olivia efficiently organized the pantry. "Rare qualities these days." "My mother taught me well," Olivia replied, a pang of grief momentarily constricting her throat. "She'd be proud, I'm sure." Mrs. Patterson hesitated. "You should know, Blackwell isn't likely to give up easily. He's not used to being crossed." Olivia's hands stilled on a jar of preserved peaches. "What do you think he'll do?" "Nothing directly. He's too shrewd for that, but he has influence in town," she sighed. "Just be careful, especially if you go out alone." The warning dampened Olivia's spirits, but she was determined not to let fear rule her. After finishing her morning tasks, Mrs. Patterson gave her a few hours to herself. "Go explore the town properly in daylight," the landlady urged. "Oakridge isn't all bad. There's a decent general store, a dressmaker if you ever need something special, and a small library attached to the schoolhouse." The mention of a library lifted Olivia's mood immediately. Books had been her refuge throughout her hardscrabble childhood. She set out with renewed purpose. A small map Mrs. Patterson had sketched guiding her. Oakridge in daylight revealed itself as a town of contrasts. The main street featured several substantial buildings, the bank, general store, and Golden Palace saloon chief among them, while side streets held smaller businesses, homes, and the occasional empty lot where ambitious construction had been abandoned. Olivia made her way to the schoolhouse, a simple clapboard building at the edge of town. Adjacent to it stood a small structure with a sign reading Oakridge Free Library. Her heart leaped at the sight. Inside, the library consisted of just 2 rooms lined with bookshelves, but to Olivia it might as well have been the grand reading room at Harvard. A gray-haired woman looked up from a desk. "Good morning," Olivia said. "I'm new in town. May I browse the collection?" "Of course, dear. I'm Mrs. Holbrook, the librarian." She peered at Olivia over spectacles. "Are you a reader?" "Very much so," Olivia admitted with a smile. "Books have been my companions through many difficult times." Mrs. Holbrook's face brightened. "Then you found a friend in me. Browse as long as you like. We loan books for 2 weeks to town residents." For the next hour, Olivia lost herself among the shelves, eventually selecting a collection of poetry by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. As she was about to leave, a notice tacked to a bulletin board caught her eye. "Assistant teacher needed, Oakridge School inquire with Mr. Franklin." Headmaster Olivia's pulse quickened. She'd completed 2 years at a women's seminary back east before her parents' deaths had forced her to return home. Teaching had always been her dream. "Mrs. Holbrook," she asked, "do you know if this position is still available?" The librarian followed her gaze. "As far as I know. Mr. Franklin has been searching for months. Hard to find educated women willing to come to a mining town." She studied Olivia. "Are you qualified?" "I have some training and experience," Olivia replied. "Who is Mr. Franklin?" "A good man, strict but fair. He lives in the White House behind the school. You might catch him there now if you hurry." Thanking Mrs. Holbrook, Olivia made her way to the headmaster's house. Her knock was answered by a tall, thin man with a scholarly stoop and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Mr. Franklin." "My name is Olivia Hayes. I've just arrived in town and saw your notice for an assistant teacher." The headmaster's eyebrows rose. "Indeed, please come in, Miss Hayes." Inside, the house was filled with books and maps, the residence of a true educator. Mr. Franklin asked Olivia about her background, training, and teaching experience. She spoke honestly of her incomplete education, but emphasized her lifelong love of learning and her experience teaching younger children during her seminary days. "Can you handle arithmetic through basic algebra?" "Geography, literature?" he asked. "Yes, sir, and I'm particularly fond of history." He studied her thoughtfully. We have 38 students ages 6 to 16, too many for me to teach effectively alone. He rubbed his chin. I can't offer much salary, the school board is frugal. I understand, Olivia said eagerly. I'm staying at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house and helping her in exchange for reduced rent. Even a small salary would help enormously. Very well, Miss Hayes. I'd like to give you a trial period, 2 weeks. If we suit each other, the position is yours permanently. He named a modest sum that, combined with her arrangement at the boarding house, would allow her to slowly save money. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. When may I start? Monday morning, 8 o'clock sharp. He smiled slightly. Bring your patience. Some of our older boys can be challenging. Olivia practically floated back to the boarding house, clutching her borrowed poetry book. Mrs. Patterson was delighted by her news. The school's been needing help for ages. What a perfect fit, she exclaimed. We must celebrate. I'll make apple dumplings for dessert tonight. The rest of the day passed in a blur as Olivia helped with chores, her mind filled with plans for teaching. She was so engrossed in her thoughts that she almost didn't notice the tall figure leaning against the porch post when she went outside to shake out a rug. Heard you've been busy making a place for yourself, Yates said by way of greeting. Olivia startled, then smiled. Mr. Irwin. Yes, I've been fortunate. Mrs. Patterson has been most kind, and I've secured a position as assistant teacher at the school. Already, he looked impressed. That was quick work. I believe in making the most of opportunities, she replied, and I have you to thank for introducing me to Mrs. Patterson. He waved away her gratitude. I just pointed you in the right direction, you did the rest. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. I brought something for you, a welcome gift of sorts. From behind his back, he produced a small potted plant with delicate purple flowers. Desert verbena, he explained. Thought you might like something to brighten your room. Olivia accepted the plant, touched by the thoughtful gesture. It's beautiful, thank you. They're hardy little things, he said. Survive the worst conditions but still manage to bloom. His eyes met hers. Reminded me of you. The compliment brought warmth to Olivia's cheeks. You hardly know me. I'm a good judge of character, he replied simply. Had to be, growing up the way I did. Curiosity piqued. Olivia was about to ask him to elaborate when Mrs. Patterson called from inside. Olivia. Can you help me with these sheets? I should go, Olivia said reluctantly. Yates nodded. Of course, just wanted to make sure you were settling in. He hesitated. I'll be bringing some beef to Mrs. Patterson tomorrow. Perhaps I'll see you then. I'd like that, Olivia replied, surprised at how much she meant it. That evening, as she placed the verbena on her windowsill, Olivia found herself thinking about the quiet cowboy. There was something in his steady gaze that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. The following days established a rhythm. Olivia rose early to help with breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and preparing meals with Mrs. Patterson, then had afternoons to herself, which she often spent at the library preparing for her teaching position. She avoided the Golden Palace and took care not to encounter Blackwell, though she felt his eyes on her whenever she passed near his establishment. True to his word, Yates appeared at the boarding house the next day with fresh beef for Mrs. Patterson's kitchen. He lingered afterwards, sharing coffee with Olivia on the back porch while she snapped beans for dinner. How's town treating you? He asked. Well enough, she replied. Though I've been careful to avoid Mr. Blackwell. Yates nodded. Wise, he doesn't forget easily. He studied her. You start teaching Monday. Yes, I'm nervous but excited, she glanced at him. What about you? I know so little about your life, he shrugged. Not much to tell. Ranch takes most of my time. 20 acres, 30 head of cattle, enough to keep me busy but not wealthy. How did you come to be a rancher? A shadow crossed his face. Wasn't always. Rode with a cattle outfit out of Texas for years after the war. Drove herds up to Kansas, Montana. He paused. Did some other work too, not all of it respectable? Yet you settled here, Olivia observed. Man gets tired of drifting eventually, he said simply. Saved enough for a small spread, been building it up for 5 years now. Alone, the directness of her question surprised them both. Yates's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Yes, madam, just me and my dog, Buck, though Mrs. Patterson makes sure I don't starve, bringing food out whenever she thinks I'm looking too thin." Olivia laughed. "She seems to mother everyone. Some folks need it more than others." His eyes met hers. "You've had to be strong for a long time, haven't you?" The perceptiveness of his comment caught her off guard. "How did you know?" "It's in the way you carry yourself, like you're used to bearing weight on those shoulders." He reached over and gently took a bean from her pile, snapping it. "Sometimes it's all right to let others help with the burden." Before she could respond, Mrs. Patterson called from inside, breaking the moment. Yates stood. "I should get back to the ranch. Fences don't mend themselves." "Thank you for the company," Olivia said, oddly reluctant to see him go. "My pleasure, Miss Hayes." He tipped his hat and was gone, leaving Olivia with a strange warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. Monday arrived, and with it, Olivia's first day of teaching. She dressed in her best dress, which Mrs. Patterson had helped press to crisp perfection, and made her way to the schoolhouse with butterflies in her stomach. Mr. Franklin welcomed her warmly and introduced her to the assembled students. The younger children regarded her with wide-eyed curiosity, while the older ones, especially the boys nearing the end of their schooling, watched with expressions ranging from indifference to mild challenge. "Miss Hayes will be assisting me with all classes," Mr. Franklin announced. "You will show her the same respect you show me." The day proved both exhausting and exhilarating. Olivia worked primarily with the younger children on reading and basic arithmetic, while Mr. Franklin handled the more advanced lessons for the older students. By day's end, her voice was hoarse, her feet ached, and she'd never been happier. "You did well," Mr. Franklin told her as they tidied the classroom after dismissal. "The children responded to you, even Thomas Cooper." She asked, referring to a particularly sullen 14-year-old who'd spent most of the day scowling. "Thomas is challenging," Mr. Franklin admitted. "His father works in the mines and drinks away most of his wages. The boy practically raises his 3 younger siblings." Olivia's heart softened. No wonder he's angry. Indeed, many of our students face similar circumstances. He gave her a searching look. "Teaching here isn't just about imparting knowledge, Miss Hayes. For some of these children, school is their only safe haven." "I understand," she said softly, thinking of her own difficult childhood. "I won't let them down." The days began to blend together as Olivia settled into life in Oakridge. Her mornings and evenings were spent at the boarding house, her days at the school. The modest salary from teaching combined with her reduced rent arrangement allowed her to save a little each week. She saw Yates occasionally. Sometimes he'd deliver meat to Mrs. Patterson. Other times she'd spot him in town on business. Each encounter left her feeling oddly flustered yet comforted by his steady presence. He never pressed her, never made inappropriate advances, yet his interest was unmistakable in the way his eyes followed her movements and brightened when she appeared. Word of her position at the school spread quickly through town. Most residents seemed pleased that the overburdened Mr. Franklin finally had help, though Olivia noticed some of the wealthier mining executives' wives regarded her with suspicion. An unmarried woman of uncertain background teaching their children raised eyebrows. 3 weeks into her new life, Olivia encountered her first real trouble. She was returning from the general store with supplies for Mrs. Patterson when a voice called out from the shadows between buildings. "Well, if it ain't the schoolmarm." Blackwell emerged, flanked by the same 2 rough men who'd been with him that first night. "Heard you've been playing teacher to the town brats." Olivia clutched her packages tighter. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwell, I need to get back." "Not so fast." He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You still owe me, girl. Your uncle's debt doesn't just disappear because you found another way to earn your keep." "My uncle owed you nothing," Olivia replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. "And neither do I." Blackwell's face darkened. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying there's no debt to be paid." She tried to step around him, but one of his men moved to block her. "Thing is," Blackwell continued, his voice dangerously soft. I've got a reputation to maintain. Can't have people thinking they can walk away from obligations. Bad for business. He reached out and fingered the sleeve of her dress. Pretty thing like you would do well at the palace, better money than teaching snot-nosed brats. Olivia jerked away from his touch. I've made my choice, Mr. Blackwell, please let me pass, or what? He sneered. You'll call for your cowboy protector. He ain't here now, is he? A click sounded from behind Blackwell, followed by a familiar voice. Actually, he is. Blackwell froze, then slowly turned. Yates stood a few yards away, his revolver drawn but pointed at the ground. This is getting to be a habit, Irwin, Blackwell growled, interfering where you're not wanted. Seems to me the lady wants to be on her way, Yates replied evenly, and you're preventing that. The two men stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Finally, Blackwell stepped back with an exaggerated bow to Olivia. Another time, Miss Hayes. He nodded to his men, and the three of them sauntered away, though not before Blackwell shot a venomous look at Yates. When they were gone, Yates holstered his weapon and approached Olivia. Are you all right? She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. How did you happen to be here? I wasn't, he admitted. Was over at the smithy getting my mare Rishad when I saw you heading this way. Thought I'd say hello. His eyes darkened. Good thing I did. He won't stop, will he? Olivia asked quietly. Eventually he will. Men like Blackwell move on to easier targets when they meet enough resistance. He offered to carry her packages. May I walk you back to Mrs. Patterson's, please, she said, grateful for his company. As they walked, Olivia found herself studying his profile. In the weeks since their first meeting, she'd learned bits and pieces about Yates Irwin, that he'd fought for the Union in the war, that he was respected if somewhat mysterious to the townsfolk, that he preferred his own company but was unfailingly kind to those in need. Yet she sensed there was much more beneath the surface. Why did you really help me that first night? She asked suddenly. You didn't know me at all. Yates was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, I had a sister once, younger than me. When I came back from the war, our parents were gone influenza. Eleanor was 17, trying to keep our family farm going. His jaw tightened. Local banker convinced her she owed taxes that had already been paid. When she couldn't pay, he offered an arrangement by the time I tracked her down. He didn't need to finish. Olivia's heart ached for the pain evident in his voice. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, he said, though his eyes said otherwise. But when I saw Blackwell trying the same scheme with you, something in me just couldn't let it happen again. Impulsively, Olivia touched his arm. Thank you, not just for today, but for everything. His eyes met hers, and for a moment something electric passed between them. Then he cleared his throat and looked away. You should be careful. Blackwell's pride is wounded now, makes him more dangerous. What should I do? Stay alert. Don't go places alone if you can help it. He hesitated. And maybe consider keeping this nearby. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small derringer. It's not much, but it's easy to conceal. Olivia stared at the weapon. I've never fired a gun. I could teach you, he offered. Sunday, if you're free, we could ride out to my place. It's quiet there. The invitation hung between them, fraught with implications that went beyond simple firearms instruction. To visit a single man's home unchaperoned would raise eyebrows in town. I'd like that, Olivia heard herself say, surprising them both. A smile spread across Yates's face, transforming his usual serious expression. I'll pick you up after church, then. They'd reached Mrs. Patterson's front gate. Yates handed back her packages, his fingers briefly brushing hers. Until Sunday, Miss Hayes. Until Sunday, she echoed, watching him walk away with a strange flutter in her chest. Inside, Mrs. Patterson took one look at her flushed face and raised an eyebrow. Run into someone interesting, did you? Mr. Irwin walked me home, Olivia admitted, setting her packages on the kitchen table. Did he now? The landlady's eyes twinkled. That man hasn't shown interest in a woman since he came to Oakridge 5 years ago. Half the single ladies in town have tried to catch his eye. He's just being kind, Olivia protested. Though she knew it wasn't entirely true, Mrs. Patterson made a noncommittal sound. Kindness is one thing, the way he looks at you is quite another. She began unpacking the groceries. You could do worse, you know, he's got a good reputation. Quiet, hardworking, honest to a fault. Mrs. Patterson, Olivia exclaimed, scandalized. I've barely known him a month. Sometimes a month is all it takes, the older woman replied sagely. My Harold proposed after 3 weeks. We had 42 good years together before the Lord called him home. Her expression grew serious. Life out here is hard, Olivia. When you find someone who makes it easier, you hold on tight. That night, Olivia lay awake, Mrs. Patterson's words echoing in her mind. Was she developing feelings for Yates Irwin? The very thought made her heart race. He was unlike any man she'd ever known, strong yet gentle, reserved yet passionate about his convictions. And the way he looked at her sometimes, as if he could see straight into her soul. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. Olivia sat through church service, barely hearing Reverend Miller's sermon, her thoughts on the afternoon ahead. After the final hymn, she stepped outside to find Yates waiting by a wagon, looking unusually smart in a clean shirt and his least worn hat. Miss Hayes, he greeted her with a tip of his hat. Mr. Irwin. She smiled, suddenly shy. He helped her into the wagon, his hand warm and strong around hers. Several church members watched with undisguised interest as he climbed up beside her and took the reins. Ready? He asked. She nodded, and they set off, leaving the town and its prying eyes behind. Yates's ranch lay 4 miles outside Oakridge, a modest spread nestled in a small valley with a creek running through it. A simple one-story cabin stood near a cluster of cottonwood trees, with a barn and corral nearby. It wasn't grand, but Olivia could see the care that had gone into building it, the straight fence lines, the well-maintained buildings, the small garden plot beside the cabin. It's not much, Yates said as he helped her down from the wagon, but it's mine. It's wonderful, Olivia replied sincerely. You've built all this yourself, most of it. Pride tinged his voice. Had help with the barn raising. Neighbors around here pitch in for big projects. A large black and white dog bounded from the porch, barking excitedly. That's Buck, Yates said. He's friendly, just loud. Buck sniffed Olivia thoroughly, then apparently decided she was acceptable, pressing against her legs for scratches. He likes you, Yates observed, sounding pleased. He's particular about people. Takes after his master, I think, Olivia replied with a small smile. Yates showed her around the property, pointing out the creek where he'd built a small dam to irrigate his garden, the pasture where his cattle grazed, and the new addition to the barn he was constructing. Everywhere she looked, Olivia saw evidence of a man who took pride in his work and cared for what was his. Hungry? He asked as they completed their tour. Nothing fancy, but I can offer stew and biscuits. Mrs. Patterson sent some preserves, claiming my cooking needed sweetening up. Olivia laughed. That sounds like her. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. One large room served as kitchen and living area with a stone fireplace along one wall. A doorway led to what she presumed was a bedroom, though Olivia carefully kept her eyes averted from it. While Yates warmed the stew, Olivia noticed the small bookshelf beside his rocking chair. She was surprised to find volumes of poetry, history, and philosophy alongside practical manuals on ranching and animal husbandry. You're a reader, she said, running her fingers along the spines. Winter nights get long out here, he replied. Books are good company. They ate at his small table, the conversation flowing easily between them. Yates asked about her teaching, and Olivia found herself sharing stories about her students, Thomas Cooper's surprising aptitude for mathematics, little Sarah Wilson's determination to read despite her struggling eyesight, the twins who finished each other's sentences. You love it, Yates observed. Teaching, it shows when you talk about them. I do, she admitted. Even the difficult days are rewarding in their way, she hesitated. Have you ever thought about having a family, children of your own? The question hung between them, more intimate than she'd intended. Yates set down his spoon. "I have," he said quietly. "But it didn't seem fair to bring a wife out to this isolated place. Life's hard for a woman alone in the wilderness." "Is it so different from a woman alone in town?" Olivia asked, thinking of her own circumstances. "At least in town there are other women." "Companionship." His eyes met hers. "Out here it would just be me." "Some women might not find that a hardship," she said softly. The air between them grew charged. Yates opened his mouth to respond when Buck suddenly barked outside, breaking the moment. "We should probably see about that shooting lesson," Yates said, standing abruptly, "before it gets too late." Outside, he set up Target's empty tin cans on a fallen log and showed Olivia how to hold and load the small derringer. His hands were gentle as he positioned her arms, his chest warm against her back as he demonstrated the proper stance. "It's not accurate at distance," he explained, his breath stirring the hair near her ear. "But up close it'll do the job. Just aim and squeeze the trigger, don't pull." Olivia's first shot went wide, the recoil surprising her despite Yates's warning. Her second shot clipped the edge of a can while her third knocked it cleanly off the log. "Good," Yates exclaimed. "You're a natural." They practiced until Olivia felt comfortable handling the weapon. As the sun began to set, turning the western sky to fire, Yates reluctantly suggested they start back to town. "Thank you for today," Olivia said as they walked to the wagon. "For everything." "My pleasure," he replied. Then, hesitantly, "Maybe you could come again, next Sunday." Joy bubbled up in Olivia's chest. "I'd like that very much." The ride back to town was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached Mrs. Patterson's, Olivia realized she didn't want the day to end. "Yates," she said, using his first name without the Mr. for the first time. "What you said before about it being hard for a woman out here." She gathered her courage. "I think the right woman wouldn't mind the isolation if she had the right companion." He pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to face her fully. "Olivia," he began, his voice husky with emotion. But whatever he intended to say was interrupted by shouts from down the street. "Fire! Fire at the school!" They both turned to see flames illuminating the night sky at the edge of town. Without hesitation, Yates snapped the reins and they galloped toward the commotion. The schoolhouse was engulfed in flames by the time they arrived. Men formed a bucket brigade from the nearby well, but it was clear their efforts were futile. The building would be a total loss. Mr. Franklin stood watching in devastated silence, his face illuminated by the hellish glow. When he spotted Olivia, he hurried over. "All my books," he said numbly. "The children's work, everything." "How did it start?" Yates asked, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Nobody knows," Mr. Franklin replied. "I left at 5 o'clock. Everything was fine then." Olivia's gaze was drawn to a figure standing apart from the crowd, watching the flames with what looked suspiciously like satisfaction. Gideon Blackwell, Yates followed her gaze. His expression hardened. "Stay here," he told Olivia, then strode toward Blackwell. The two men exchanged words too distant for Olivia to hear, but Yates's rigid posture and Blackwell's dismissive gestures told their own story. After a moment, Blackwell turned and walked away while Yates returned to Olivia's side, his face grim. "He denies any involvement," Yates said. "Claims he was at the saloon all evening with witnesses to prove it." "You think he did this because of me?" Olivia asked, horrified. "I think Blackwell never does anything without a reason," Yates replied carefully, "and he has reason to want to cause trouble for you." Mr. Franklin approached them again. "The mayor's called an emergency town meeting for tomorrow evening to discuss rebuilding. Miss Hayes, your presence would be appreciated." "Of course," she agreed immediately. "What will we do about classes in the meantime?" "That's what we need to determine," the headmaster sighed. "We can't lose momentum with the children's education." As the fire gradually died down, reduced to smoldering embers by the bucket brigade's efforts, people began to disperse. Yates escorted Olivia back to Mrs. Patterson's, both preoccupied with thoughts of the fire and its implications. "Be careful," Yates warned as they said goodnight. If Blackwell is behind this, he's escalating. The Derringer isn't just a precaution anymore. Olivia nodded, a chill running through her that had nothing to do with the night air. "Will you come to the meeting tomorrow?" "I'll be there," he promised, his hand briefly squeezing hers before he departed. The town meeting was held in the church, the only building large enough to accommodate most of Oakridge's residents. Mayor Wilson, a portly man with political ambitions beyond their small town, called the assembly to order. "As you all know, our schoolhouse burned to the ground last night," he began. "Sheriff Donovan is investigating the cause, but regardless of how it started, we need to rebuild. Our children's education cannot wait." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Olivia sat beside Mr. Franklin in the front row while Yates stood at the back, his tall frame easily visible. "The question is," Mayor Wilson continued, "how quickly can we raise the funds and manpower necessary?" "My company will donate lumber," offered Samuel Harris, owner of the lumber mill. "The miners can provide labor on Sundays," added another man. The discussion continued, with various citizens pledging resources or skills. Then a voice from the middle of the room cut through the conversation. "Seems to me we're overlooking something important," Blackwell said, standing. "How do we know this fire wasn't set deliberately? By someone new to town, perhaps, with questionable background?" A hush fell over the assembly. Olivia felt blood rush to her face as several people turned to look at her. "What exactly are you suggesting, Blackwell?" Yates called from the back, his voice dangerously calm. "Just that it's mighty convenient this fire happens right when we get a new teacher in town," Blackwell replied, making air quotes around the word teacher. "A woman with no references anyone's actually checked. For all we know, she could be running from the law." Olivia stood, hands trembling but voice steady. "Mr. Blackwell, I arrived in town well after dark on my first day here. You met me at the stagecoach, if you recall. You know perfectly well I had no opportunity to arrange for references to be checked. And I did check them," Mr. Franklin added, rising beside her. "I wrote to the women's seminary Miss Hayes attended and received confirmation of her education and good character 3 weeks ago." "Convenient timing," Blackwell sneered. "Right before the fire." "That's enough," Mayor Wilson interjected. "We're here to discuss rebuilding, not to cast unfounded accusations." "Are they unfounded?" Blackwell pressed. "Or are we too blinded by a pretty face to see what's happening? This woman shows up with nothing, worms her way into a position of trust with our children, and suddenly our schoolhouse burns down. And what possible motive would Miss Hayes have for such an act?" Mrs. Patterson called out, her usual placid demeanor replaced by righteous anger. "To destroy her own livelihood, to harm children she clearly cares about. Who knows what's in a woman's mind?" Blackwell replied dismissively. That was too much for Yates. He pushed through the crowd until he stood face to face with Blackwell. "Your problem isn't with Miss Hayes," he said quietly. "It's with me. I'm the one who stopped you from forcing her into your debt scheme. I'm the one who's been watching to make sure you don't try again." "You accusing me of something, Irwin?" Blackwell's hand hovered near his gun. "I'm saying if anyone had reason to set that fire, it wasn't Miss Hayes." Yates's voice carried through the now silent church. "And I'm saying that anyone who continues to slander her reputation will answer to me." The tension in the room was palpable. Sheriff Donovan, a man known to be in Blackwell's pocket, stepped forward. "That sounds like a threat, Irwin." "Just a statement of fact," Yates replied evenly, not backing down. Mayor Wilson banged his gavel. "This meeting is about rebuilding the school, not personal vendettas. Mr. Blackwell, unless you have evidence to support your accusations, I suggest you sit down." He turned to the assembled townspeople. "Now, regarding temporary arrangements while we rebuild." The meeting continued, with the church basement being designated as a temporary classroom. Supplies would be gathered, donations collected, and construction would begin as soon as possible. Throughout the proceedings, Blackwell sat glowering while Yates remained standing, his eyes never leaving the saloon owner. When the meeting adjourned, Olivia found herself surrounded by supportive parents and townspeople, many offering encouragement or apologizing for Blackwell's behavior. She was touched by their support, but shaken by the public confrontation. Yates waited until the crowd had thinned before approaching her. "Are you all right?" "I think so," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you for defending me." His eyes softened. "Always." The word hung between them, loaded with meaning beyond this single incident. "Olivia," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "What I wanted to say yesterday before we were interrupted." "Yes," she prompted when he hesitated again. "Maybe this isn't the right time," he said, glancing around at the people still milling about. "Would you walk with me?" "Just to the edge of town." They strolled in silence until they reached the outskirts of Oakridge, where the main street gave way to the open prairie. The setting sun painted the landscape in golds and purples, a majestic backdrop for whatever Yates wanted to say. "I've lived alone a long time," he finally began. "Convinced myself it was better that way, safer." He turned to face her fully. "Then you stepped off that stagecoach and something in me just recognized you, like my heart knew you before my mind did." Olivia's breath caught. "Yates, let me finish," he said gently. "I know it hasn't been long, I know by all conventional standards this is too soon, but life out here doesn't always follow conventional paths." He took her hands in his. "I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Hayes. And if you think there's any chance you might someday feel the same, I'd like to court you properly." Joy surged through Olivia's chest, bright and overwhelming. "I don't need someday," she whispered. "I'm already halfway there myself." The smile that broke across Yates's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as Olivia responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. When they finally separated, both breathless, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "I know things won't be easy with Blackwell causing trouble," he murmured, "but we'll face it together." "Together," Olivia agreed, the word feeling like a promise, a future unfolding before them. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Classes resumed in the church basement, cramped but functional. Olivia threw herself into making the temporary space as conducive to learning as possible, while construction began on a new schoolhouse. Yates courted her openly now, calling at Mrs. Patterson's with flowers or small gifts, escorting her to church on Sundays and taking her for rides around the countryside. Each time they were together, Olivia felt her feelings deepen, transforming from infatuation to something more profound and enduring. Blackwell remained a shadow over their happiness. Though he'd made no more public accusations, Olivia often felt his eyes following her in town. Rumors circulated that he was pressing Sheriff Donovan to find evidence linking her to the fire, but with the town largely on her side, his efforts gained little traction. One evening in late autumn, Yates invited Olivia to dinner at his ranch. Mrs. Patterson, now fully supportive of their courtship, winked as she saw Olivia off. "Don't stay out too late," she advised. "Though if you do, I'm sure he'll see you home safe." The ranch looked different in the fading light of autumn, the cottonwoods shedding gold leaves, the garden harvested, preparations for winter visible in the stacked firewood and repaired fences. Yates had clearly been working hard. He greeted her with a kiss that still made her knees weak after weeks of courtship. "I have a surprise for you," he said, taking her hand and leading her toward the cabin. Inside, Olivia gasped. The simple main room had been transformed with a tablecloth, candles, and what appeared to be borrowed china. "Mrs. Patterson helped," Yates admitted, seeing her surprise. "Said if I was going to do this, I should do it properly." "Do what?" Olivia asked, though her heart began to race with anticipation. Yates drew her to the table but didn't sit. Instead, he took both her hands in his. "Olivia Hayes, when you came to Oakridge, you had nothing but the clothes on your back and a heart full of determination. Blackwell saw only poverty and tried to exploit it." His voice grew husky with emotion. But I saw what he couldn't, that you're rich in all the ways that truly matter. Rich in courage, in kindness, in intelligence, in spirit. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. I'm not a wealthy man by conventional standards, he continued. But I have this land, this home I've built with my hands, and a heart that's yours completely if you want it. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as Yates opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring with a small pearl. It was my mother's, he explained. Eleanor would have wanted you to have it. Yates, Olivia whispered, her voice catching. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Olivia Hayes, will you marry me? Will you build a life here with me where we can face whatever comes together? Yes, she answered without hesitation, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Yes, with all my heart. Yates slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to kiss her, a kiss that sealed their commitment and promised a lifetime of love. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. When? He asked, holding her close. As soon as possible, Olivia replied. I don't want to wait. Christmas, he suggested. The new school will be finished by then. We could start the new year together here. The thought of waking up in this cabin, making it their home together, filled Olivia with such happiness she could barely speak. She simply nodded, kissing him again in agreement. They shared the dinner. Yates had prepared surprisingly well-cooked venison stew and fresh bread, and talked of their future together. After, they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill, content in each other's presence and the promise of all that lay ahead. News of their engagement spread quickly through Oakridge. Most reactions were positive misses. Patterson beamed like a proud mother. Mr. Franklin offered sincere congratulations, and many townsfolk expressed their good wishes. Even Thomas Cooper, Olivia's most challenging student, grudgingly admitted that Mr. Irwin is a good man when she announced her upcoming marriage to the class. Not everyone was pleased, however. Blackwell's face darkened dangerously when he overheard the news being discussed in his saloon. That night, a dead rattlesnake appeared on Mrs. Patterson's porch with a note. Wedding gifts come early for some. Yates was furious when Olivia showed him the note. This has gone far enough, he said grimly. I'm going to settle this with Blackwell once and for all. Not with violence, Olivia pleaded, catching his arm. That's what he wants, an excuse to draw on you. What would you have me do? Yates asked, frustration evident in his voice. Wait until he escalates further. Until he hurts you, we go to Judge Wilson, she suggested. Show him the note, tell him everything from Blackwell's initial attempt to force me into servitude to the accusations about the fire and now this threat. Yates considered her words. The judge is a fair man, unlike Sheriff Donovan, but Blackwell has influence. So do we, Olivia pointed out. The townspeople are on our side. The parents trust me with their children, and you've been here longer than Blackwell people respect you. In the end, Yates agreed to her approach. The next day, they rode to the county seat where Judge Wilson kept his office. The judge, a silver-haired man with shrewd eyes and a reputation for incorruptibility, listened carefully to their account. Threatening notes and dead snakes aren't typically within my jurisdiction, he said when they finished. But the attempted coercion and false debt claim are more serious matters. He steepled his fingers. Do you have any proof of these claims? Only our word, Yates admitted, and perhaps Mrs. Patterson's, who witnessed some of Blackwell's behavior. The judge nodded thoughtfully. That might be enough to warrant an investigation, especially given Blackwell's reputation. He's been suspected of similar schemes before, but no one's been willing to testify. We're willing, Olivia said firmly, so I see. Judge Wilson studied them. Very well. I'll send my clerk to Oakridge tomorrow to take formal statements from both of you and Mrs. Patterson. If your accounts align and seem credible, which I believe they will, I'll issue a summons for Blackwell to appear before me on charges of intimidation and fraud. Relief washed over Olivia. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet, the judge warned. Men like Blackwell don't typically surrender quietly. Be vigilant until this is resolved. The judge's warning proved prescient. When they returned to Oakridge, word had already spread that they'd gone to see Judge Wilson. That evening, as Yates was riding back to his ranch after escorting Olivia home, two masked men ambushed him on the road. He managed to outdraw one, winging him in the shoulder while the other fled. The wounded attacker refused to identify himself or confirm Blackwell's involvement, but the message was clear. Blackwell wasn't going to let legal proceedings stop him. The next day, Judge Wilson's clerk arrived as promised to take their statements. By nightfall, a formal summons had been delivered to Blackwell, ordering him to appear in court the following week. The saloon owner's rage could be heard clear down the street as he threw glasses and furniture in his establishment. Fearing further retaliation, Yates insisted Olivia stay at his ranch until the hearing. "It's not proper," she protested weakly. "Propriety be damned," he replied, uncharacteristically forceful. "I can protect you better there. Mrs. Patterson can come as chaperone if needed." In the end, they compromised. Olivia continued teaching during the day, with Yates or one of the other ranchers escorting her to and from school. At night, she stayed at Mrs. Patterson's, but Yates hired two trusted cowhands to keep watch. The night before the hearing, Yates came to Mrs. Patterson's for dinner. The three of them sat around the kitchen table discussing their testimony for the following day. "Just tell the truth," Yates advised. "Judge Wilson is good at spotting lies." "I'm not worried about our side being truthful," Olivia replied. "I'm worried about what Blackwell might claim." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. "Truth has a way of coming out, dear. Have faith." After dinner, Yates and Olivia stepped onto the porch for a moment of privacy before he departed. The night was clear and cold, stars sharp against the black sky. "This time tomorrow, it could all be over," Yates said, pulling her close. The judge might not be able to prove Blackwell's involvement in the school fire, but the fraud and intimidation charges should be enough to diminish his influence. "And then we can focus on our wedding," Olivia said, resting her head against his chest. 13 more days," Yates murmured into her hair. "Not that I'm counting." Olivia laughed softly. "Liar, you've been marking days off your calendar. Mrs. Patterson told me." He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest beneath her ear. "Caught, I can't help it, I'm eager to start our life together." They stood quietly for a moment, savoring their closeness and the future that seemed within reach. "I should go," Yates said eventually. "Early start tomorrow for the ride to the county seat." Olivia lifted her face for his kiss. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "And I love you," he replied, "more than I ever thought possible." As he mounted his horse, Olivia had a sudden feeling of foreboding. "Be careful riding home," she called. "Please?" Yates tipped his hat. "Always am. See you at dawn." She watched until he disappeared into the darkness, then went inside, unable to shake the sense that something was wrong. Her instinct proved right. Shortly after midnight, pounding on the front door woke both women. Mrs. Patterson grabbed her robe while Olivia reached for the derringer Yates had given her. "Who's there?" Mrs. Patterson called through the door. "Jacob Miller, madam, from the Triple R." It was one of Yates's cowhands. "Got urgent news for Miss Hayes." Mrs. Patterson opened the door to reveal a disheveled young cowboy, his face grim. "It's Mr. Irwin, madam," he said to Olivia. "There was a fire at the ranch. The barn's gone, and he's been hurt trying to save the horses." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "How badly?" "Doc Simpson's with him now, said to fetch you quick-like." Within minutes, Olivia was dressed and climbing into Jacob's wagon, her heart pounding with fear. Mrs. Patterson insisted on accompanying her, bringing bandages and herbal remedies. The ride to the ranch was agonizing. When they finally arrived, the scene was chaotic, the barn a smoking ruin, cattle lowing nervously in the pasture, and several neighboring ranchers still dousing hot spots with water from the creek. Buck met them at the wagon, whining anxiously and leading them toward the cabin. Inside, they found Yates lying on his bed, the local doctor bent over him. His right arm and side were heavily bandaged, and his face was unnaturally pale beneath a layer of soot. "Yates." Olivia rushed to his side, taking his left hand in hers. His eyes flickered open. "Olivia," he rasped. "Blackwell's men, I saw them riding away." "Don't try to talk," Dr. Simpson advised. "You've inhaled a lot of smoke and those burns need time to heal. How bad is it?" Olivia asked the doctor, her voice steady despite her fear. "Second-degree burns on his arm and side, smoke inhalation, a bump on the head where a beam fell." The doctor straightened up. "He's lucky to be alive and luckier still that his hands weren't burned. He'll recover, but he needs rest and careful nursing." "I'll stay with him," Olivia said immediately. Mrs. Patterson nodded approval. "I'll return to town and pack your things. You'll need clothes and supplies if you're staying out here." She glanced at the doctor. "Would that be improper, given the circumstances?" Dr. Simpson snorted. "Propriety is the least of our concerns right now. The man needs care and they're to be married in less than 2 weeks anyway." He began packing his bag. "I'll check on him tomorrow. Change the bandages twice daily, keep them clean, and make sure he drinks plenty of water." After receiving detailed instructions, Olivia saw the doctor out while Mrs. Patterson sat with Yates. Outside, several ranchers approached to offer help. "We've rounded up most of his cattle," one said. "They scattered when the fire started, but they're back in the north pasture now. And we saved 3 of his horses," another added. "The rest. He didn't need to finish." "Thank you all for coming," Olivia said sincerely. "I know Yates would want to thank you himself if he could." "No need for thanks," the first rancher replied. "Irwin's a good neighbor, he'd do the same for any of us." He hesitated. "Miss Hayes, everyone knows this was Blackwell's doing. We're ready to ride into town right now and settle things if you give the word." The offer was tempting, the thought of Blackwell facing frontier justice for all he'd done. But Olivia shook her head. "That's not the way. Judge Wilson will see justice done tomorrow. If Irwin can even make it to the hearing," the rancher pointed out. "I'll go in his place," Olivia decided. "I can testify to everything except the attack tonight, and for that, we have witnesses who saw Blackwell's men riding away." The ranchers exchanged glances, clearly admiring her resolve. "We'll escort you," one offered. "Make sure you get there safely." With arrangements made, Olivia returned to Yates's side. Mrs. Patterson left with Jacob to retrieve Olivia's belongings, promising to return before heading to the hearing the next day. Alone with Yates, Olivia gently bathed his face with cool water. His eyes opened, clearer now. "You shouldn't be here alone," he murmured. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," she replied, attempting a smile. "Though it seems there are fewer of those now," he winced, but not from physical pain. "The barn, the horses, years of work gone in an hour, we'll rebuild," Olivia said firmly. "Together." "The hearing, I'm going in your place," she interrupted. "With Mrs. Patterson and several of your neighbors as escort, the ranchers saw Blackwell's men fleeing. We'll make sure Judge Wilson knows everything." Yates's hand tightened around hers. "Be careful, Blackwell's desperate now." "I'll be safe," she promised. "Now rest, you need to heal." Throughout the night, Olivia dozed in the chair beside Yates's bed, waking often to check on him or give him water. By dawn, his fever had subsided and he slept more peacefully. Mrs. Patterson arrived with Olivia's things and fresh supplies. "Are you sure about this?" the older woman asked as they prepared to leave for the hearing. "We could ask for a postponement." "No," Olivia said firmly. "Blackwell needs to be stopped now before he can harm anyone else." 5 ranchers joined them for the ride to the county seat, all armed and grimly determined. The journey passed without incident, and they reached Judge Wilson's courthouse by mid-morning. The judge frowned when Olivia explained Yates's absence. "This is a serious development," he said. "Attempted murder, destruction of property, these go far beyond the original charges." Blackwell arrived with his lawyer, looking confident until he saw the assembled ranchers glaring at him. His composure slipped further when Judge Wilson announced the additional allegations. "This is absurd." Blackwell blustered. "I was at my saloon all night. I have witnesses." "Yes, your employees," the judge said dryly. "Meanwhile, I have 5 respected ranchers who identified your men fleeing the scene of the fire." The hearing proceeded with Olivia Mrs. Patterson and the ranchers testifying in turn. Blackwell's defense crumbled as witness after witness corroborated the pattern of intimidation and fraud. By the time the judge called a recess to consider his ruling, Blackwell was visibly sweating. When court resumed, Judge Wilson's expression was stern. Based on the testimony presented, I find sufficient evidence to bind Mr. Blackwell over for trial on charges of fraud, intimidation, arson, and attempted murder. He banged his gavel. Bail is denied. Sheriff, take him into custody. As the county sheriff approached with handcuffs, Blackwell's control finally snapped. He lunged toward Olivia. "This is your fault, you little one." Of the ranchers intercepted him with a solid punch that sent Blackwell sprawling. The sheriff dragged him away, still shouting threats. "Miss Hayes," Judge Wilson said once order was restored, "I suggest you return to Oakridge with your escort. I'll arrange for deputies to provide protection until the trial." "Thank you, Your Honor," Olivia replied, relief and exhaustion washing over her. "When will the trial be?" "Within a month," the judge promised. "And given the evidence and witnesses, I expect a swift conviction." The return journey to Oakridge felt lighter despite their weariness. News of Blackwell's arrest had preceded them, and townsfolk came out to express their support as they passed through. At the ranch, they found Yates sitting up in a chair on the porch, Buck at his feet. He struggled to rise when he saw them approaching, but Olivia hurried to his side. "Don't you dare stand," she scolded gently. "You're supposed to be resting." "Couldn't rest not knowing what happened," he replied, his eyes scanning her face anxiously. Mrs. Patterson beamed. "Blackwell's in custody. No bail," and Olivia was magnificent, told the whole story clear as day without flinching once. Pride and love filled Yates's expression. "That's my girl." The ranchers departed after ensuring all was well, leaving Mrs. Patterson as chaperone. She busied herself in the kitchen, giving the couple some privacy on the porch. "I was so afraid," Olivia admitted, sitting beside Yates and carefully taking his uninjured hand. "When Jacob came for me last night." "I know," he said softly. "I felt the same when I realized the fire was set deliberately. All I could think was that they might have come for you instead." He squeezed her hand. "But it's over now." "Not quite," she corrected. "There's still the trial. And rebuilding the barn. And our wedding," he added with a smile, "though we might need to postpone it until I can stand at the altar without assistance." Olivia shook her head firmly. "December 25th, just as we planned, even if I have to prop you up myself." Yates laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his burns. "I love you, Olivia Hayes, more today than yesterday, and I didn't think that was possible." "And I love you," she replied, leaning carefully to kiss him. "Enough to become Mrs. Yates Irwin, burns, damaged barn, and all." The following weeks brought healing for Yates's injuries, for the ranch, and for Oakridge itself. Blackwell's reign of influence ended with his arrest. His saloon was purchased by a businessman from the county seat who transformed it into a more respectable establishment. Sheriff Donovan, implicated in Blackwell's schemes during the investigation, resigned and left town. True to her word, Olivia insisted their wedding proceed as planned on Christmas Day. The new schoolhouse was completed just in time, and the townsfolk decorated it with pine boughs and ribbons for the occasion. Mr. Franklin proudly gave Olivia away, while Mrs. Patterson dabbed at tears throughout the ceremony. Yates, still bandaged but healing well, stood tall beside his bride as they exchanged vows. When Reverend Miller pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the assembled guests shook the rafters of the new building. The celebration continued at their ranch, where neighbors had worked together to rebuild a temporary barn. The new structure would wait until spring, but the gesture moved both newlyweds to tears of gratitude. As evening fell and the last guests departed, Yates and Olivia stood on the porch of their cabin, their home, watching the winter sunset paint the snow-covered landscape in pink and gold. "Happy?" Yates asked, his arm around her waist. "Completely," she replied, leaning against his good side. though I still can't believe how much has changed in just a few months. For the better, I'd say. He kissed the top of her head. You know, when I first saw you facing down Blackwell that night, I told him you were rich in heart. I didn't realize then how right I was or how much richer my own life would become because of it. Olivia turned in his embrace, careful of his healing burns. We both found riches where others saw only poverty, she said softly. That's the real gift, isn't it? One of many, Yates agreed, bending to kiss her as the first stars appeared above their home. In the years that followed, the Irwin ranch prospered. Yates and Olivia welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Alina after his sister, followed 2 years later by a son. Olivia continued teaching part-time even after the children arrived, her students including not only the town's children but eventually her own. The new barn, built in the spring after their wedding, stood stronger than the original. Inside, a special stall housed a gift from the townspeople, a magnificent mare to replace those lost in the fire. Blackwell was convicted and sentenced to prison, his threats becoming merely an unpleasant memory as life moved forward. Oakridge grew and changed, but the Irwin Ranch remained a constant, a place of warmth, love, and hospitality for travelers and neighbors alike. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on the same porch where they'd begun their life together, surrounded by their children and the achievements of a decade, Yates took Olivia's hand, the years of hard work evident in both their calluses. You ever think about that first night? He asked. How close you came to a very different life, Olivia smiled, the years having only enhanced her beauty in his eyes. Sometimes. But then I remember what you said, that I was rich in heart, and I realized later that's all that truly matters. Everything else, this ranch, our children, our life together, grew from that beginning. The best investment I ever made, Yates said with a grin, was in a woman others thought had nothing to offer. And the wisest decision I ever made, Olivia replied, was trusting a cowboy who saw beyond appearances. As the sunset gilded their home in gold, they shared a kiss that held all the promise of their first, yet deepened by the years they'd shared, and all those still to come, a testament to the riches found when two hearts recognize what truly matters.